Hey everybody, Derek here to bring another video for The Walking Dead Season 6. I do apologize for not putting my heads up review on YouTube last night. I don't know what happened here, but my internet was not uploading the video. The connection was so slow it wouldn't even upload it. It was taking forever, so I'm hoping maybe today it may be more cooperative. So I do apologize for that. But I'm going to give my review of Heads Up, let you guys know what I thought about it, and what it might mean for next week's mid-season finale. If you are not caught up with The Walking Dead, if you are not caught up to episode 7 or the comics, then do not watch the video because otherwise you will be spoiled. Okay, so first off, I'm going to, say heads up because a major spoiler is revealed right at the beginning. And that is that Glenn is alive. Thank God. Glenn turns out to be alive. And kind of how many of us have predicted it, Nicholas's body fell on top of Glenn's. Glenn crawled under the dumpster. When the walkers, that saw him crawl under there as well. He stabs a bunch of them and kills them, and their bodies, in a sense, block the, slit at the bottom of the dumpster, and no other walkers can get through. Hence, I think also the smell of the walkers, lingering in the area can kind of mask the smell of Glenn. And just, I think, a combination of all those factors, plus the walkers, maybe that were left never saw Glenn go under there. So the walkers disperse and Glenn crawls out alive and well. Thank goodness. And what ends up happening is he looks up and all of a sudden Enid is there and she throws a water bottle down for him, which he of course drops. And that's where we get the title of the episode, Heads Up, being heads up, I'm throwing the water bottle down at you, and he misses it. But he ends up going in this building and finds another one. And, Glenn's wondering, well, Enid, why are you out here? What's going on? Enid doesn't really want to, go back with Glenn to the community. She informs him that the community was attacked by the wolves, and she left. And Glenn spends most of the episode trying to convince her to come back, and to get back. And I'll explain that, later on in the video. But what I also want to really talk about is what was going on in Alexandria, because there were a lot of important developments with Rick that I think that we should touch on first. Rick, of course, is trying to get a plan together to, save the community. At this point, the community walls have been surrounded by walkers, and there's this concern, are they going to break in? What are we going to do? And, one of the first things that he does in this episode is he teaches Ron how to shoot. Without bullets, of course. He gives Ron the gun, and Ron, practices looking down the sights and stuff. And Ron gives Rick a suggestion, hey, maybe we should, institute some target practices for some people. It might be helpful. And Rick kind of, dismisses the idea, saying it's not really a good idea. Later on in the episode, we see Ron steal some bullets from the armory. He distracts Olivia and steals the bullets. And we see him at the end of the episode walking behind Carl with the gun in his hand, prepared to potentially shoot Carl, but doesn't, And, we have to wonder if that might be hinting at something coming up on the show very soon. But that was some of the developments with Ron, and Rick kind of helped him learn to shoot. But a lot of the things that were going on in this episode with Rick was really this continuing idea of whether he could trust the individuals in Alexandria and whether he really, gave them any weight or any thought at all or any concern. Because we've seen throughout the show with Rick, if you were with him at the beginning, you were lucky because, the trust was built from the beginning. People like Glenn, people like Daryl, people like Michonne, the other survivors have really been fighting alongside Rick all this time. And they have grown, to trust him and he them. But these new people, Rick hasn't built that relationship, and he kind of, I think, is a little bit mixed about it and may see them as a liability. And we see many times in the episode where Rick kind of just dismisses any concern for Alexandria residents. There was that part when Michonne and Rick were talking about a plan to, go over the walls and get a car, and Rick goes, well, let's just get our people in on this plan, not worry about the others. We don't want to include them. And Michonne was like, well, Rick, they're in this with us too. They're important. We should include them. Later on in the episode, we see Rick talking with Tobin. They're building up a support because there's this one part of the wall that was bleeding through. And they were building a support. And Tobin kind of gives Rick a little bit of a helpful hint, if you will. He tells him, I'll never forget when you first came here, Rick. We were scared. You had that big bushy beard. You had that look on your face, analyzing all of us, looking for weaknesses, really trying to, engage us. And we were scared of you. And Tobin asks Rick to really just be patient if he can. To realize that, things in Alexandria were very slow. Rick is right. They were lucky. The quarry, never running into, people like the wolves or the cannibals or anybody, they were mostly shielded. And then all of this happens all at once at a very fast point. And Tobin just tells Rick, look, things were slow, then they got fast. He just asks that, he not give up on them. That they can be good people, that they can, all work together and fight together, and he hopes that Rick can eventually build that trust. And what happens later on in the episode is Spencer actually tries to go over the wall himself. He takes a grappling hook, throws it over onto another rope, and starts to crawl across on the rope. Well, the grappling hook doesn't stick, and he ends up falling. Spencer falls into the walker herd, and the rope at least is still connected on the other side. It didn't drop. So Tara actually, leans out over the wall and starts to shoot at some of the walkers, and Rick, Morgan, and Tobin end up, jumping into action, and they pull Spencer up and over the wall again and save his life. And it was very interesting what happened after, because Rick kind of looks over at Tara and goes, Tara, what the heck? Like, you already risked your life for these people once before and you almost died back in Spend when she went on that mission and got that concussion. And he goes, why are you doing it again? And Tara, who is now officially the bravest woman on the show at this point, just flips Rick the bird, flips him the middle finger. And I thought that was a big moment, because, then Rick turns to Spencer and goes, what were you thinking? Like, what were you doing? Why are you doing that? And Spencer just wanted to help. He wanted to get a car and maybe lead the walkers away. And Rick goes, have you ever done a plan like this before? Have you ever thought about this? You should have come to me. And then Spencer says, well, would you have even listened to me even if I had brought the plan? Which I thought was a very important moment. Because it really, at this point, that really is a big theme of Rick's, is will he trust these Alexandria people, and will he form a connection with them like he has with his other group members? And, you see that, along the entire season. Back in the third episode, when Rick tells Michonne and Glenn, hey, see if you can get the other guys back, but if you can't, then you need to get out of there and get back on your own. I want you guys to make sure you get back. Which shows the distance between everybody and the way that Rick looks at people. I can understand that to a certain extent, but on the other hand, what Tara tells him later, because Rick does apologize for what he said, it rings true. Tara says, we're all in this together. And Deanna comes up and thanks Rick, at the end of the episode as well. And Rick says, well, I only did it because he's your son, and Deanna goes, no, that's not really the right answer, Rick. Really is this idea of, they are all in this together. And, it's like Abraham Lincoln said, united we stand, divided we fall. If all of these individuals cannot get together and work with each other to defend this community, then it's going to fall. I absolutely believe that. And Rick, I think, needs to get with the picture a little bit, that these people do matter, and he needs to start looking at them as important group members rather than just a liability or a number. So I thought that was a pretty interesting development as well. We also, again, Glenn spends most of the episode, trying to get Enid to come back with him. Enid just says repeatedly she doesn't want to come back. Actually ends up pulling a gun on Glenn at one point, to get him to leave and leave her alone. But Glenn is defiant. He says, no, I'm not leaving you out here. I don't leave people behind. You're coming back. And Enid relents and starts to go back. And along the way, they actually start to collect some of the green balloons that they were marking for the territory when they were guiding the walkers out of the safe zone and out of the quarry to get them 20 miles away. And Glenn really sits down and talks with Enid. He wants to figure her out because Enid's really always had this pessimistic outlook. And we see with Glenn, he actually really, I think, helps her a little bit in this episode. He says, I get it. You've lost your parents, you've lost things. You're afraid of growing close to that again. So instead of, giving things a chance, you just, shrug your shoulders and say, well, this is just the way the world is. And, I'm just going to accept it and move on and not grow close. But Glenn tells her, the real way to honor the dead is by living. That's the best way to honor them, going on, living the life that they didn't get to, and trying to be happy. That honors them. But Enid, really has this grim look, at the world. When they get to the walls and they see the walkers, surrounding the walls, which they didn't know about, Enid just drops into that, sad state and looks at Glenn and just goes, look, the world is trying to die, and we should just let it. And I thought that was a very, very interesting quote. I really enjoyed that. The different perspectives that people have, and Glenn, trying to convince her, no, there's more to this. The world is not trying to die. We need to make it better, and we can. And you see various different personalities and people, having opinions, and I think it's very interesting. And I thought that it was a very interesting conversation that they had. And I have to wonder if Enid's perspective might change a little bit, and I hope it does. I hope she can grow as a character. A couple of other things going on in the episode. We had some other moments with Rosita actually teaching people how to work the machetes. And I loved that moment, because she actually had Eugene out there too, because of course Eugene's not really a good fighter. And Eugene's kind of in this, this sulky, I'm afraid everything's gonna, get in and hurt us. And, Rosita sees he's not really giving an effort, and she walks up to him and goes, hey, get with the picture, man. What are you doing? And Eugene tells her, well, I'm scared of dying. And Rosita says, no, that's not the right way to look at it. You should be afraid of living. You should be afraid of living and not doing something to save somebody else's life, because that's worse. When you're dead, that's it. Whatever was on this earth, your time is done. And whether you just, fade in nothing, whether you go to heaven, whether you go somewhere else, whatever your belief is, or, that's that. But no matter what way you look at it, your time on the earth is done. You don't have to worry about that stuff anymore, no matter what happens after you die. But while you're alive, that's something that should make you afraid. Because if you could have done something to save somebody's life and you don't do it, that's on Eugene, and that's something that Eugene has to live with. And I really love how she just gave him that lecture. And, Eugene just takes it in and, well, he drops the machete and walks away. And I have to wonder if those words might, affect him later, and whether it will in a good way or in a bad way, and maybe it might be too late, but maybe it might be just on time. If you watch my mid-season finale death predictions video, you'll see a little bit more about what I'm talking about there. And then the main other thing going on was with Morgan. Rick, Michonne, and Carol actually talk with Morgan about what happened in JSS. As we know, Morgan let those wolves go, and those 5 wolves ended up, attacking the RV and Rick narrowly escaped. And Rick and the others confront him, and say, hey, you did this. Why did you do this? Why would you do this? And Morgan was definitely, I thought it was a very interesting conversation that they were having, because you see with Morgan this inner conflict of whether Aikido is really the proper way or not. He admits to Rick, he says, well, I get your point, because it is hard to live this life. It is hard to adopt this, perspective that all life is precious. And I get that I put your life in danger. And, he looks at it in both ways. He says, well, I understand what you mean. But on the other hand, he says, well, you didn't kill me, Rick. You did not kill me back in season 3. And Rick goes, well, that's because I knew you. And, well, Morgan was like, well, no, you kind of didn't know me at that point. I was a different person. At that moment, I'd have sooner killed you than, anything else. And it's really by luck that, Morgan was snapped out from that brief moment with Rick. But you see this idea of, well, look, if you would have killed me, I never would have come here. I never would have, become better. And I never would have saved Daryl and Aaron. And what would have happened? And he kind of, challenges Rick, but at the same time understands. And, Rick basically asks him, do you think you can really make it in this world, without shedding blood with this idea of all life is precious? And Morgan admits, I don't know. But he says, I have no other options at this point. He says, I don't know if I can live without Aikido. So that may be a very, big moment for him. And one of the things that we saw is he includes Denise in on his help for the wolf, because of course the wolf cut himself and the wound may be infected, and Denise is going over to help him. And Carol sees them going someplace because the group does not know that Morgan is holding the wolf in that cell. They don't know at this time. So Carol follows, and then Carol leads Judith with Jesse and has a quick conversation with Sam. Sam is still upstairs, scared. And, Sam basically asks Carol, was my dad a monster? Were those people the monsters? Very scared. And Carol, is trying to find the right thing to say. And you hear her say, look, Sam, the only way that you can prevent from becoming a monster is by killing. And, I really have to wonder, what lessons Sam may be learning, how much of an influence Carol really is on him, and what it may mean for the future. But, they definitely have a very interesting relationship, and I have to wonder if it will continue. But Carol ends up confronting Morgan, who's in the cell, but we never exactly see how that goes down. What ends up happening at the very end of the episode is Glenn and Enid release the green balloons, and the people in the community see it, and they realize it's a sign. Maggie's been standing up on the wall the whole episode looking for Glenn's sign, finally sees it. Everybody gets this hope. Glenn's alive, everything's great. They need to find a way to get him inside, when all of a sudden, which was kind of being hinted in the episode, there was that burnt structure that was standing right next to the wall, which I don't know if that was the guard tower or what it was, but it was burnt. I mean, it was just literally this burnt piece of rubble of a building. And throughout the episode, wood kept falling off of it. You're wondering, well, what's going on? Was that, somebody just getting wood for, building the structures or what? But it looks like walkers were pushing on it. That building falls. Part of the wall goes down. Walkers are coming in. The community is about to be invaded, and I think it is going to be one heck of a good mid-season finale. And I'm going to do some predictions on it and see what happens. But that is my review for Heads Up. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, don't be afraid to leave them. Feel free to subscribe. I do have more videos coming. If you have any suggestions for future videos that you would like to see, don't be afraid to suggest them. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you very much for watching.